What is up, everyone? Corey here. Today we're going to be going over 5 things that I learned from my beginner experience backcountry camping in the swamps of Florida. If you haven't seen that video, go ahead and check it out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to comment because I'd love to hear your thoughts in the description about things that I'm doing wrong and things that I can improve on. Anyways, let's get into it. Alright guys, first things first. I had a really great time backcountry camping for the first time. I learned a lot of valuable things that I wouldn't have been able to learn if I went out there with someone who was really experienced. So, big disclaimer on this video. I'm not an expert. I do not claim to be an expert. I'm a guy who has 6 years of experience in the military, doing very basic things in the field. So, I'll be leaning on some of that experience today in these lessons learned. But do not take this as any type of recommendations. These are things that I do. These are not necessarily things that you should do. This will cover a very broad range of topics from a beginner's perspective. So if you're looking for expert opinion, you will not get it here. These lessons are in no particular order. You have to decide what you're going to prioritize when you go out to primitive camp or backcountry camp. All right, guys, number 1 lesson learned. I should have understood my local laws and restrictions better. And this is something that I've figured out and learned very quickly before I even stepped foot on the campsite, before I got in my car. This was weeks, days in advance. I thought camping was going to be something that was really easy. You just go, reserve a campsite, or you do dispersed camping, which is basically just camping kind of wherever you want. But after doing research, after looking into the campsites themselves, in Florida at least, it is extremely restrictive on where you can camp specifically. And it's different for other states, so I can only speak about what I experienced in Florida. But knowing my local laws and restrictions helped me understand that and helped me have a realistic expectation about when I do go to another campsite in the future. It helped me understand that I'm going to have to reserve multiple months ahead of time. It's probably going to be an area that a lot of people go through. There's going to be traffic. There are areas I'm sure that aren't like that, but around where I live, it's hard to find. One last thing I wanted to touch on this, and a lot of these ecosystems that people go to or that I go to in Florida are extremely fragile. Florida is an extremely populated state, so the conserved land that we have needs to be protected. And in order to do that, I have to follow my local laws and restrictions on where you can camp, where campfires can go, what type of wood that you can utilize for campfires and stuff like that. So please learn from me. Florida is very, very strict about wildlife and ecosystems, as they should be. Last thing on this point, one website that I used, I'll put it in the description, is the federal state park website. They have a lot of great rules and regulations for federal state parks, but make sure I also checked my local Florida state park rules and regulations as well for that information. All right, guys, my weak body is shutting down. I need to get a pillow to put down underneath my foot. All right, guys, number 2 thing I could have done better was checking my equipment and bringing backups for my equipment. So I brought backups for my equipment. I brought backup batteries, but I did not bring a backup power supply, and I did not bring a backup recording device. If my phone, which is what I record these videos on, if that would have failed, I wouldn't have been able to make that video. So I should have brought a camera or some other recording device. Also, my battery, my solar power battery or portable charger, ran out of battery, and I only had a full charge of my phone left. Like, luckily I was fine. If I was out there for any more than a night, my phone would have died on me. So with this comes, and it's actually something that I think I did a pretty decent job at, but something that I can do better in the future. Checking my equipment beforehand. I like to check my equipment on the night before. Obviously, I pack everything, check my equipment the night before, a day before, and then before I leave, I'll check my gear, and it helps me understand where all my gear is at in my bag too. In case something crazy happens, I always have a tourniquet in my bag. But sometimes I move things around, and it has happened to me before in the past where I needed something very urgently, like my wet weather gear, because I didn't want to get rained on, and I'm rummaging through my bag to get it. So understanding where your gear is by checking your bag can be really helpful. The term we use in the military is PCCs, PCIs. So they're different, but for the purpose of this video, we're going to call them essentially the same thing. Pre-combat check, pre-combat inspection. So we're going to focus on the pre-combat check part, but essentially pre-combat check is a quick check that you have all your essential gear for your mission. So my mission was to go backcountry camping, and my pre-combat check was the day I left. I checked all my gear, made sure I had all my equipment before I left, and if I was missing something or something I forgot or maybe took out of my bag the night before, I put it back in my bag and I have everything. Another part of that is not just making sure you have the gear, but making sure that the gear is functional. Making sure you have the batteries for that gear, making sure your headlamp works, making sure that nothing's broken, nothing's rusted. Take care of your gear, and your gear will take care of you. All right, guys. One thing I realize I'm doing a lot throughout this video is saying your gear, take care of your stuff. You. I'm using the you word a lot. Please do not take this as something that is a comprehensive guide. Third thing that I could have done better was understanding my physical limits. I always want to be at a level that is challenging, but not dangerous. Okay. And you should always err on the side of caution and not do something that's going to over challenge you, because when you're out there and you're alone and you get injured, that is a very, very tough thing to deal with. I had slept on the ground before. I had slept in a hole. I've slept in a forest with no tent or anything before. But try to be as comfortable as possible as well. Um, and part of that is not being uncomfortable, being sore, um, being physically strained and physically overexerted. You might have trouble sleeping. You might get an injury, which will obviously hurt. It would have hurt me a lot if I got injured on that backcountry camp, especially with the amount of weight I was carrying on my back. One mistake I made was overestimating my abilities on that first backcountry camp. I think I probably went around 6 miles round trip. Trust me, I know 6 miles is not a lot. Um, I actually just did a 12-mile ruck a month ago, but translating that to more weight on my back, I mean, it really took the life out of me. I really should have worn that weight on my back to understand my physical limits a little bit better. Alrighty, guys, number 4. This is something that is near and dear to my heart. Land navigation, land navigation, land navigation. And part of that land navigation piece is staying calm when you get turned around. You don't have to be an expert land navigator. But one thing that I did that worked for me and I probably could have done better at was looking at the land that I was going to, looking at a map of that individual place, planning out my route, and following that route. In that video, if you go back and watch, there was a time where I got turned around. And I know I just said in that video, oh, I got a little turned around, but I probably walked an extra mile. And that goes back to the physical ability. Why you want to underestimate your physical abilities? Because if you do get turned around or lost or end up having to carry more than you think you should, you have that reserve energy to be able to accomplish those things, because it will happen. Nothing ever goes perfect when you're going out in the woods, but keeping a level head while you do it. The times that I have gotten really lost are the times that I don't slow down, I don't think, and I just go. Every time that I've slowed down, took a breath, and looked at my map and where I was, and thought about where I was, and backtrack, use some type of backstop. A backstop is basically just, if I reach this point, I need to turn around because I've gone too far. So in that video I went to, I realized I was in the wrong place because I hit a backstop of, I'm going way too far on this trail. I should have hit a different trail already. So I backtracked to a point that I knew, and I went from there. The trails will not always line up with what's on the map. I've learned that the very hard way. Last thing on this is knowing the weather. That's something that I did pretty well. Was I went and I looked at the weather beforehand. There was no rain, which was nice. I brought rain gear anyways, just in case, because Florida can be unpredictable when it comes to that. But knowing the weather, bringing the appropriate weather gear. Fifth and final thing that really helped me, and a lesson that I will bring to the future, is to educate yourself on bushcraft, survival techniques, camping techniques. This can be through books, YouTube videos. There's a ton of YouTube videos out there. Um, I like to read books because I like to see pictures. And generally, I would say the most, in my opinion, the most experienced knowledge is in books. So these are some of the books I read. Uh oh. Excuse me, buddy. So, like I said, I'm not sponsoring or any type of craziness. These are just books that I read. They can serve as topics to read about, topics to get. So I have this Bushcraft 101 book by Dave Canterbury. I'm a big fan of Les Stroud, so I read a Les Stroud book. This was probably, to be honest with you, the least informative out of the three. And then this Bushcraft book, this is a very advanced. There are some beginner things in it, but this book goes heavily into advanced techniques. I'm not a bushcraft guy who goes into the woods every single day. I go out into the woods max twice a month, maybe three times during, depending on um, depending on other circumstances. But I don't go every day. So this is more of an advanced book. The book I learned the most from was this Bushcraft 101 book. So these are essential things. The essentials helped me learn the best. Philosophy is going into the field. Um, I think that's probably the thing that helped me the most. Yeah, there's specific technical knowledge about how to do specific bushcraft things, but for me, who is a normal dude who goes out, it's really taking a specific mindset from them and using those techniques as you go into the field. Once again, not recommendations. These are just books that I read that helped me. I was only out there for a night. I brought all the gear I needed. And I know as my experience level increases, I will be able to bring less gear and use the natural environment to my advantage. But if I would have went out there with just a tarp and a knife, I probably would have been able to survive, but it would have been very uncomfortable for me. So learning from other people's mistakes, me learning from other people's mistakes. So part of this is easing yourself in and understanding that this is a process that you'll be learning throughout. That's my mindset going into it. I realized that going out, um, I'm not an expert in bushcraft. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to make mistakes. So don't overdo it. Do it in moderation, learn from it, and be able to enjoy what you're doing. Last thing, and I've already kind of hammered this home, but build on the previous experience that you have. You're not in the military. Maybe you went camping when you're 10 or 15 or whatever. Try to use those experiences as a confidence builder and understand that actually I kind of do know how to make a fire. I haven't made a fire in probably 5 years, to be honest with you. And my time making a fire went pretty smoothly. And it was because I prepared with the right tools, I prepared with the right equipment, and I have the right mindset and technique going into that survival. And I use books like that and YouTube resources to be able to understand that. I had to say my first experience backcountry camping was overall extremely positive. However, it did require the most time that required actually going camping, not recording in the YouTube thing, was on the front end, preparing, educating myself, and getting ready for that experience. And that is how it should have been. All right, guys, well, that's going to do it for me on this video. I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully, you took something away from this video as a guide, a rough, basic mindset from me personally. But seriously, if you have your thoughts, opinions, I would love to learn from you. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments. And hopefully, there will be more content coming soon. I'm working on some stuff, maybe going up to North Carolina for more than one day. And hopefully that'll be a more in-depth experience than what I did just one night in Florida. So yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day.